Thank you so much, Julie. I want to start out by saying that Julie and I both went to GCMYC together, and that is how we know each other through our master's program. And I am so happy to be a Remake ambassador, and I will go straight into it. I wanted to start a little bit about me and what's better than starting from the beginning. So I have a couple of stories. I loved fashion from a very young age, as you can see. In the picture on my birthday, that was the day that I decided I wanted to be a fashion designer, because I was wearing my alphabet dress and the girl next to me who was sharing my birthday was wearing a dress her mom had designed in silver lame, and I've never been so jealous in my life, and I hated my alphabet dress from that day on, which had before been my favorite dress. And it's just a funny story to talk about how, perception is part of how we view ourselves and view the community around us. So a little bit more about me and where I'm from. I've lived in California, Oregon, Florida, and New York. I've traveled all over the world for work as a shoe designer. I've had jobs from babysitter and cashier to salesperson and shoe designer. And I've gone to school in Oregon. I even went to FITM in LA, which is like the FIT of Los Angeles. I'm sure they wouldn't want me to say that though. And then of course, GCMYC, which is the Glasgow Caledonian New York College Masters in Sustainability. A little bit about my background that I think is interesting and what kind of talks to what we're speaking about today is that I've been a shoe designer for 15 years. I'm still a shoe designer. Alternew is I never like to say side hustle because it's not a side hustle. I just happen to have a job and I'm also running a business. But I do think that having built Alternew and have this purpose and drive in what I'm doing in my day-to-day has actually improved the way I build footwear for my day job. So now we go into a little bit more about Alternew. The way I kind of came up with Alternew is that I had always wanted to be a fashion designer, then I wanted to be a shoe designer. And I think like most of you, at some point, we felt like this cog in the wheel. We felt like we didn't have any autonomy. We didn't have any drive or purpose in the spaces we were in. However, that didn't mean we weren't, building product that was exciting. I always say like, there's 10% of my job that I love as a shoe designer, which is like building the product, shopping in Europe, going to China, like connecting with people. But then all of the other stuff of not having that autonomy to build something that you're really passionate about, and building something to the spec of someone else's needs and wants. So I was in my apartment. I was doing my master's. I was working really I was working full time. I was doing my master's, and I actually had a TaskRabbit come over and help me kind of purge my closet. I felt so overwhelmed by my space. And one of the things she pulled out of my closet was a bag of clothes. And she said, "What is this?" And I said, "Oh, those are alterations." And she said, "Have you done them?" I was like, "No." "How long have they been here?" And that's where I paused for a while, decided not to tell her how long they had been there, and just donated them instead. These are things that, looking back now, I realize had maybe rips or tears or something that put them right into a landfill instead of going to a second life. So I started Alternew January of 2020. I had my event, my first event on March of 2020. You can see in the first picture is me inviting everyone to this big event that I had spent a lot of money on at a venue with influencers and tailors. And then the next one is me telling everyone we were not going to have it. And then also telling them it would happen on April 17th, the next month, which obviously didn't happen either, nor did the next 3 we had planned. We ended up adapting and we launched a GoFundMe to make masks for frontline providers and essential workers. And we ended up raising over $20,000 and made 40,000 masks for frontline providers. and really built a community of tailors and sewers in a time when we all felt so small. It gave us like a really big impact to have, just by allowing for people who were at home to make masks. And I think we don't talk enough about the process of making the mask in addition to the people receiving the mask. So it was really nice to build that community. And that kind of will take me into my 5 pillars of activation. So I had talked about how important it was to build this community and create this space. But the reason I was able to do that is because Alternew had such a clear mission. So I have 5 pillars, the 5 pillars of activation, and then I will go into each one and kind of describe how I came about this idea, but mission, plan, connecting, data and tracking, and then mental health. And you see that these are bookmarked in more kind of visualized rather than data driven, they're emotionally driven. So starting with the mission, and the reason I talked about having Alternew turn into the New York City Face Mask Initiative is we had a clear mission in the purpose of creating community around alteration and empowering people to have a more long-term relationship with their clothing. The mission is a statement that provides the organization with a clear and effective guide for making decisions. And if you could just put in the chat, if you have a business, and 2, if you have a mission, a vision, or a North Star, I'll go through those in that, just yes or no, or anything you want to say. But the next one is a vision. That's a statement that ensures that all decisions made are properly aligned with what the organization hopes to achieve. Things in vision are education, training, opportunity, connection. And then the North Star finally represents that unwavering definition of purpose, products, and potential acquirers. That's the thing you kind of keep where you know it's not today. For us, it's like certifications, trainings. It's really creating a new standard for alterations. But it's not something we can do tomorrow. It's something that we keep. And I always try and describe it as like a Christmas tree or the top of a maypole. You have all of these things that are happening from your day to day, but without that piece at the top, keeping you grounded, you're never going to be able to accomplish what you're trying to. So then we move on to the plan. So we have this mission, we have our North Star, what now? So one of the things I used to plan is the social lean canvas. Everyone talks about a business plan. Do you have your business plan? And that's great. You should, and I hope you do. And I love people to say in the chat if they do have a business plan or if they do know what a lean business canvas is. But this is I like to call it a living document. Yes, things will stay the same, but this is something you can constantly go back to. The thing about a business plan is it's daunting, it's large, it is continuously looked at, but this is something that you can look at regularly as kind of a snapshot of what you're trying to accomplish. And as you can see, it's from the social lean canvas. So it's really purpose driven. And one of the things that they've added is your purpose and your impact. For us, part of the impact is, creating new habits in customers to be able to do alterations as a way to extend the life of their clothing. Another option for planning is Airtable. Does anybody use Airtable that's in the chat right now? Allison, Julie, is there anyone, yes or no? I just want to know if I'm starting from the beginning or if most people are familiar with it.
Anyone, just chime in if you can. We haven't seen, no one's commented yet to the use of Airtable, but if you do, just let us know and then Nancy can speak to that.
So I'll just talk about it for myself. The thing about all of these tools is it's all about personalization. How do these tools work for what your end goals are? So for me, I have a few ways in which I use Airtable. This is one, which is my Alternew content management. Here I have application and grant content, and I don't know if you can see the little thing thing next to it, which is links. So I keep all my links there so that I can, what's your Twitter link? Okay, it's in I know it's in my Airtable. And the application and grant content, I can't scroll through this, but you see the categories about Alternew, about me, and you can go back and forth. And I use this a lot when we're doing like grant requests or applying for contests, so you don't have to keep looking back to them. And so like, for example, I had the conscious fashion application. So I did a few things for that. Another plan is Trello. I don't know if anyone uses Trello. Again, Julie and I spoke about this. Trello can be used in so many different ways. This is not only how I personally do things, like I have an Alternew team board, but I also have my personal boards, which I put in like business books, fashion books, and I can think of it as like for those who don't know, a Kanban board, I think that's how it's pronounced, or like a basically movable post-it, which is such a simple way to describe something that's much more intense. But there's also ClickUp and Monday.com and all of these different things. The thing I like about Trello, it's free, it's user-friendly, and you can get a free power up. So we use Calendar, so we can add calendars, and you can see in this image that I tried to put some things that are older so you don't see what's happening right now, but the vintage show setup, I assigned people to it, I added dates, and it's just a great way to keep yourself organized in a very disorganized time of building a business. Another version is the content calendar. This is a great way to keep yourself organized and what you're going to focus on. And it's free, and that's really nice. And these are some older ones that we've done in the past. The next one, and what I'd like you to do is, if you can think of other planning tools that you have, please feel free to add them in through this. And I will tell you why at the end. So then we move into connecting. So the thing I like to share is, how did you feel the first day you met your best friend? Did you know they would be your best friend? Did you know how much value they would add to your life? Well, I think that in networking, we kind of go out and we seek that instant gratification. But really what we're looking for is building relationships and opportunities, not only for now, but for our future. So sometimes it can be, and we always talk about helping others as the easiest way to help ourselves. Your success is my success. But I do think, like a lot of vocabulary, it is very quickly exploited. Think of words like sustainability, trauma, triggers, like all of these words have been kind of monetized, politicized, and lost their real value. So I've created this term collabo-working, and it's really this idea of going into things with a more open mind and allowing yourself to connect with people in different ways. And one of the things I like to talk about, I'm going to just add this quick thing. So I have my CRM, and I love Airtable. So this is Airtable. You can see I can color code, bubble. So for me as a visual person, this allows me to most accurately see the full scope of my connections, where they've lived, where they live now, emails, websites, notes. Sometimes when I'm sending out letters or quick emails, I can write that here. Anyone who has a CRM is familiar with this. For me, I really like this specific tool. And I'd love to know if you have other tools that you use for your CRMs. I know HubSpot is one that people use a lot. But also in terms of connecting, you're not just looking at organizing those connections, but how are you connecting with people? So I put a few things that I am a member of or belong to, which is Luminary, which is where I'm at right now, which is a women's collaboration space. It's kind of, it's a space I can be in, but also connect with other women and women allies for opportunities and connection. Dreamers and Doers, huge one. GEO, remake, I added. But the one thing I was going to say about connecting is I want to just remind everyone that if you're connecting with someone, the best person you connect with are the people that potentially have differing views. I think that we are in a place where we're forgetting to learn from the people with differing views. And I know, and I'm trying to even keep anything other than business and connection and anything political out of it. But just remember those with differing views, those people who have an issue with your business, like those are opportunities for insight. Those are ways to say, okay, this person doesn't agree with me. How can I use this? Not necessarily to force them to agree with me or to, push my own agenda, but really like, how can I use it? Not only to learn, listen to hear, not to be heard. And also to grow myself and potentially be even more persuasive going forward. And one of the books I always talk about in terms of like this space and learning to connect are actually two books. One is Difficult Conversations, and the other is is Influence by Robert Cialdini, which is the 6 weapons of persuasion. And I say weapons, and that's kind of what they joke about, but it's a really interesting book on and helps you understand the way in which people connect. So then we go into data and tracking. So you're seeing actually like a sneak peek at our app. I pulled in a couple pages from it. We have the wireframe fully done. We are just working on our video and teaser to help us raise capital to get it fully made. And the reason I have my app in here is because our app is all about connecting data. And we talk about privacy. We talk about really important things around, what's happening in the world with privacy. And we have to kind of figure out the best way to get data, track it, use it in the most effective way, but also allow for those privacy spaces. And at another time, I can talk to you about all the founders I've spoken to and all the different privacy laws that have actually like really damaged their businesses, but also are good for people. So it's a really, it's a paradox. So for data and tracking, back to that, what do you need to know? That's hopefully in your mission. That's hopefully in your planning. That's hopefully in your connecting. And this is where you take all that information and organize it in a way that you're able to get valuable data. So different things I use are Airtable, as I said, Trello, QuickBooks, CRM. I think all I'm trying to say here, and the reason this is an important pillar, is because you've created all of these tools. This is the most important tool because it gives you something to do with it. So an example for us is understanding how many fittings we've had, how many clothes have been alternewed, how many users have registered, which allows us to project future growth as well as more accurately train, hire, and build out our own business. The final one I have is mental health. And I will just say here, I think that's another of these exploited terms. We talk about self-care, and I truly think self-care is important, mental health is important, but it's another personalized space. Like I think social media tells us what self-care is. Like self-care is whatever you want it to be. For me, it's something as silly as like watching like Schitt's Creek before I go to sleep, because like it's something that like I think is funny and it helps me fall asleep really easily. Or for me, I actually created my own bullet journal. So on the right, you'll see every day I do this, and I think, oh, you can't see me, but I'll do it when I'm off. But I actually have it with me, my little daily planner that I actually had published so that I could write in it. And these are like daily tasks that I'm working on each year. Like, did I do my daily planner? I get to check that off. And that this is what I call my daily planner. Did I do yoga in the morning? Did I do handstand practice? And some of these things have changed over time. One of the things I've added that I'm going to put in my next one is drinking water in the morning. Not even like, did I drink 8 glasses a day? Just, did I wake up and drink 20 ounces of water? That's my new thing. So kind of going through and creating what mental health means to you, writing it down, speaking about it, because then it becomes mental health. Because if you just watch TV, but don't give it, like, I need to watch TV. But if you say, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to watch half an hour of TV. It's been a long day, and this is for me, and I'm really going to enjoy it. There's something in like defining it that gives it more value. So now, with that, I think I've sped through these. I didn't.
That's great, Nancy. I think all of what you've shared was excellent, and I was when Nancy and I were talking about this, having this workshop, I also related to Nancy that just very interesting is the Remake Book Club is currently reading a book about the guide to eco-anxiety. And it's just a real thing. And of course, with so many, you know, we work and we want a sense of purpose, and how do we balance it all? We just thought, as Nancy was walking through, you know, that she has a job and she's created something that she's very passionate about. There's just so many tools we can all learn from. And we may take for granted the tool we use. Just as Nancy and I were talking about this, I was like, oh, I use that. That's interesting how you use it. So any of you that want to follow up, you know I'm happy to share with you how I use the tools that Nancy has in the in her presentation. And if any of you have other tools, you know, what's beautiful about this is we have the kind of community that we can show each other, you know, how those could be used. So I'll just say that, please, you know, raise your hand or chime in and let us know if there's other things you'd like to ask any of us or Nancy about how she's been going about this.
And I added my info. Please feel free to reach out, but I'm gonna turn this off so I can unshare and you can see my face. So if everyone has that, let me stop. And the one thing I will say is that I think one of the reasons it's really important for me to share these tools and understand what these small pieces are is because it really is in the weeds where we figure out the best way to build our businesses. So I have a daily mantra that I use, and my daily mantra is, the mighty oak is the acorn that stood its ground. And I do think building businesses are just a practice in resilience and a practice in getting in the dirt and doing what needs to be done. It can be as simple as, you know, calling someone who had a bad experience, or for me, it's saving $40 because I go to one of our tailors and pick up alterations and, you know, take the subway over to the client to drop them off. It's hopefully what you all are doing as you build, because one day you won't do that. And it's great to understand all the pieces of the puzzle before you create it.
I have a quick question. At what point, like when starting your business, did you start using like the Airtable and Trello? Like, how did you know, like it's time for me to get a little bit more organized?
I should have done it day one, that's when you should do it. Like, and that's hopefully the advice I give is you just open Airtable. And I will shout out to Alyssa, who was unable to make the call today, but she's also a Remake ambassador and she's also our tailor manager. And she's actually expanded. If you start and you just use the basic functions, it's not long until you learn more and more and more and are able to use them in their most effective way. And what Alyssa has done is actually now, each time we get an appointment through Calendly, it puts that customer into Airtable. And when our tailors take pictures of the clothes, those pictures go into Airtable and we're able to price out, create quotes, and put them into delivered. And it's all of these different functions that we didn't have at the beginning. So I guess I did it. I think I started doing it after we had the face mask initiative because we got so slammed with that. We started using Excel turned into Airtable. And for me, it was just talking to a bunch of people, that whole idea of connecting and being able to create these spaces. But my suggestion is find something, use it. And if you don't like it, use something else, but just get into something. Like start pulling that data together so you can figure out the best way to organize.
That's great.
Thank you. Yeah, that's very helpful.
Yeah, the Airtable, I used it similarly as Nancy for like a mask making initiative. And that way you could, manage the supplies, like the ins and the outs, the timing, which can be utilized in so many different ways.
Yeah, I'm just looking at some of the chats to see if are there people who use other tools that someone asked about Jessica asked about how Trello compares to Miro. I don't like Miro personally because it's expansive. And so you're looking at everything at the same time. And so it's very overwhelming for me. It's great as like a design sprint. It's great as a group tool, but in terms of day-to-day operations, I'm able to like separate my ideas more clearly in Trello. However, like sometimes it's easier to move things around in Miro. So if you're trying to create your best plan, maybe that's a place to start. And then as things get bigger and bigger, you start moving it into Trello or something similar. Some people use Airtable as their Trello. I personally prefer both. Just to be honest, I like how pretty Trello is. I think I like adding a different image to each one, and I like that I can see who's assigned to it, and I can see each thing quite clearly. You add pictures, you could see in my images that like it's pretty easy to see the pictures that have been added, etc. Yeah, so I could have mentioned Miro. I know people who use it. I don't use it. So Airtable. Is there anyone who uses Monday.com or Honeybook or QuickBooks? I had mentioned I don't need to go into payment processing, but that goes into data, understanding the way in which if you do it correctly, you can see the reporting on your month over month, year over year, and that helps you if you're looking to make money, or sorry, get investors, but also make money.
I do have another question, like regarding, I know you were talking about like mental health, and I know it's like burnout is so easy to get, even just having like one job or one project. How do you kind of like get through burnout, or maybe like even like stop it before it really happens, working with two full-time jobs?
I think that's where the mental health piece comes in. And so what had happened is the reason I've built these 5 pillars is because I needed like a tangible understanding of what I was going through and the best solutions. And so by creating these pillars and by bookmarking them in mission and mental health, I was able to create this, create a space to be more clear-headed. And what I also will say is, and I very much like, I don't want to be vocal about it, but I also want to share, like, I have seen a therapist. I've gone through talk medicine is what I like to call it. And I've created, and this is, again, this is in my own like quirky way of saying, I have created a toolbox for myself with ways in which to deal with things as they come. You don't go to a therapist because you're like, I'm sick, I need you to heal me. You go to someone because you need ways to understand what you're going through and the best way to nurture that. So one of the tools I use in that is the RAIN acronym, recognize, accept, investigate, nurture, recognizing what you're going through, starting by accepting it. Okay, I'm pissed. All right, investigate. Why am I pissed? Am I pissed because someone did something wrong, or am I pissed because I actually didn't give them the right information to have them do the right thing for me? And then nurturing, as simple as I'm gonna solve it, and I'm gonna allow that to happen, you know, and you've already accepted it. So that's one of the ways. Another way I like to think about is this pendulum. I try and kind of keep myself balanced of like, I'm super pissed, I'm gonna punch a wall, never punch the wall. Or I'm like super like depressed, and it's all these things of just like recognizing those and going forward with that. And the one thing I will say about RAIN is I am going to share with you guys, if you're interested, I keep this toolbox. I have a shared drive that I put all of these resources in, and the last resource is actually loan and grant emails. I'm trying to get people to add to it so that we can have more options. But in the mental health space, I have like something called like Dailyo, which is an app that's like a daily, you put in like how you almost gamify your daily feelings. So there's different options in there, and I'll send those to you. And it's actually one of the reasons why I was asking you guys what your tools were, so I can make sure to add them before I send that out. And then Gabriella, you had a question.
Yes, I have two questions. One is like a two-part question, but my first question is, what would you say was your hardest part of building your business? And do you only exclusively work with small sustainable businesses with your business as well? And then my second question is, for someone who's aspiring to have an ethical and sustainable fashion business, what would you say is your biggest piece of advice to start that business?
Okay, so starting with what my biggest piece of advice would be. If you're looking to start an ethical business, do not start it by going against everything that what you think of as unethical or doing. I have been a footwear designer for 15 years. I've worked for several different large companies. I have learned so much from them, and I've understood the value of why they do what they do. You need to understand why they're doing it in order to grow in a different way. And you'll see, you also need to look at companies that you follow as ethical and do the research and understand if they're truly ethical or if they're marketing. Because you start seeing these things and you want to emulate them, and then you realize you can't emulate them and make money because they're just a marketing ploy. I have some examples, which I won't, feel free to email me, and I can talk about some examples, but it's really truly, Taylor once come to me and say, you know, I need to make more money. I'm taking a job at Urban Outfitters, and so I feel terrible. I feel like it's against what I want to do. And I said to her, that's great. You're going to learn so much, not about what not to do, but like about what works for them, how they've grown, and what you can add to that to make it a socially responsible, ethically responsible, environmentally responsible space. There's also like entrepreneurship. So just don't discount the negative in order to get to the positive. And then your other question was around, I forgot, I'm sorry.
It's okay. What would you say was your hardest, I guess, piece about building your business? And do you also exclusively work with
Right.
sustainable brands?
So that's interesting. I do not work with just sustainable brands. We work, in fact, we have a higher price, like we have a $79 in-home fitting fee. The reason we have that is so that we can pay our tailors fairly for their travel and for the work that they're doing. In order to do that, some of the people we work with have just, you know, are probably not into fast fashion, but like you don't know someone's sustainable, you don't know what they're doing. You're providing an opportunity for them to be sustainable. So for us, our mission is to help people extend the life of their clothing. That means, and this is where you have to be really clear about what you want to do, because if we're working with businesses, we're working with, so we just built a partnership with Reese, which it sells new clothes. And technically, you know, my personal goal is to focus on what we have instead of what we buy. However, they're looking to be more sustainable. They're looking to have a modern, fresh approach to alterations. If we can help their clients have a better relationship with the clothes they have through alterations, we've done our job. So it's about understanding your mission so clearly that you know the best ways to do it and the ins and outs. And then the hardest part happens every day. It's the hardest part 5 months ago is not the hardest part now. For me, what I'm dealing with right now is building out advisors who are consistent. Like consistency has been my biggest barrier, because you have people who are so willing to help, which is incredible. And they give you an hour of your time and they think that's going to help you grow. And in fact, kind of add 17 more questions to the things they gave you. So one of the things I'm working on is how do I create a board of advisors that are providing more consistent help to give us a more like a more focused path to our next step, which is raising our pre-seed.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for answering my questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah. What's your business?
I am currently an undergraduate student, but I'm pursuing a double minor in fashion management and sustainable apparel and textile innovation.
Well, we are hiring unpaid interns, and unfortunately unpaid, but we are hiring interns. So if you're interested, reach out.
For sure. Thank you.
And then Jessica.
Yeah, hi. I have a question sort of directly related to your business because it sounds very similar to mine, but from a different angle. We're teaching workshops to extend the life of clothes where you guys coming into the house. So I like that angle. But I'm curious because you talked about like grants and applications. So like, what is your actual legal structure of your business? Because that's something that we're struggling to figure out right now. Like if we want to go for profit or nonprofit. And
Just because you're not being nonprofit does not make you ethical, and being for profit does not make you unethical. I want to start there. For me, we are a for-profit business that we are an LLC, sole proprietorship. And in my opinion, I can do more for profit than I could with a nonprofit. There are a lot of barriers around being a nonprofit. So I think that there are spaces where that works. I'd love to talk to you guys about doing a collaboration at some point. So I will reach out, but I think we spend so much time thinking really linearly in our businesses that we forget that to have this like holistic approach of the best way to move forward. So my immediate suggestion would be like, make money and use that money to invest in businesses that you believe in. Make $1 million, go invest in what you believe in. That's my final answer.
That's great advice, Nancy. I mean, you've shared so much. I feel like I've learned from you things that tools that I would love to continue to use. We can continue this conversation. You know, anyone on the call, you're welcome to reach out to myself, Allison, or Nancy, and we can put you in touch with each other. But thank you so much for joining the workshop and bringing your great questions. It has really, what we've talked about will certainly help others that can like listen to this recording later. And we really appreciate you.
And the one thing I will add, just as which I did not save this time because I'm the presenter, is if you have like a Post-it or something, make sure that you have an intro ready. So whenever you're on these Zooms, you have your intro and your links so people can quickly link to you, and make sure it's a link, not just like find me at so-and-so, like HTTP dot, like they click it, they go to it, and they can think of it later. Like that is my final thing, because I'm looking and I don't see anyone introducing themselves with and I'm so happy to meet all of you, but always have that intro. So nice to meet you guys today. My name is so-and-so. This, you know, clothes are mass produced, bodies are not. Here are my links, please connect. And I should have put it in immediately, but I do that for everyone I'm not a presenter in. So I'll leave you with that.
Okay, so with that, that's great advice. I think we can all do that better. And thank you again, Nancy, for your time and for sharing, you know, so much of like what you do. It's just been really helpful for all of us.
I'm so happy to hear, and thanks for those of you who put your screens on. So nice to see you, and please reach out.
Take care, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.
Bye, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.